March 25, 2026. China releases footage that makes every naval strategist in the Pentagon stop breathing. 7 fully autonomous warships executing coordinated attack patterns off Zhuhai. No remote operators, no human supervision, just pure artificial intelligence making kill decisions at 35 knots. 3 weeks later, a leaked Pentagon assessment lands like a bomb. Existing U.S. Navy doctrine is not configured to counter this. While America keeps humans in the decision loop, China just proved their machines can detect, track, and engage targets faster than any human response time allows. But here's what should terrify you. This isn't a prototype. This is operational deployment, and they have a deadline. The platform they're using is called the Jari USVA Orca, and it's not what you think a drone boat looks like. This thing displaces up to 500 tons. It hits 42 knots. It can operate 4,000 nautical miles from base. The trimaran hull configuration isn't for show. It's engineered for stability during autonomous weapons deployment in rough seas. And speaking of weapons, the Orca carries vertical launch systems with up to 12 cells, surface-to-air missiles, anti-ship cruise missiles, 2 torpedo launchers, remote weapon stations. This is not a patrol boat. This is a distributed missile platform with firepower matching Corvette-class warships, but with 0 crew vulnerability. China State Shipbuilding Corporation developed it as part of systematic integration across the entire planned fleet. The design philosophy is critical here. These platforms are mass-producible. They're attritable. You can lose 3 and it doesn't matter because you built 30. Traditional naval defense calculations just broke. The Chinese military has a specific term for what's happening. They call it intelligentized warfare. And that word choice matters because this isn't about adding AI features to existing ships. This is about restructuring the entire operational doctrine around machine speed decision cycles that completely bypass human bottlenecks. The timeline should alarm you. November 2025. The Type 076 Sichuan begins sea trials. March 2026. The L-30 swarm demonstration happens off Zhuhai. March 29th. They run a cross-domain cluster system operational test. That's 16 weeks. 16 weeks from trials to operational swarm warfare demonstration with live weapon systems. What makes this different from anything the U.S. Navy fields comes down to decision authority. American doctrine keeps humans in the loop. A sailor reviews the data. A sailor authorizes engagement. A sailor maintains continuous decision authority over weapons release. It's doctrine. It's policy. It's how we've always done it. China is engineering the exact opposite. Human out-of-the-loop systems where AI makes tactical decisions at machine speed without waiting for approval. The advantage is simple physics. Radio signals travel at the speed of light. Human cognition does not. In a swarm engagement with dozens of autonomous platforms coordinating attacks, the side that thinks at machine speed wins before the other side finishes processing the threat. Dalian Maritime University demonstrated what this looks like at scale. Their Xinhongzhuan project created a unified command structure integrating sea, land, air, and underwater autonomous technologies. 15,000 smart sensors feeding data into AI decision-making networks. Not 1,500. 15,000. The system coordinates across domains without human translation layers slowing down the process. A submarine-launched drone detects a surface target. An aerial platform confirms identification. A surface vessel fires without a single human being involved in the decision chain. The entire engagement happens in seconds. The 2027 deadline isn't arbitrary. It's the target date for full integration of intelligentized warfare doctrine across plan operations. And based on what they demonstrated in March 2026, they're ahead of schedule. But the real question isn't whether China can build autonomous warships. They already did that. The real question is what happens when these systems meet American forces still operating on human speed decision cycles. The deadline is January 1st, 2027. That's when the People's Liberation Army Navy plans to complete full integration of artificial intelligence across every sensor, every weapon system, every command network in its fleet, 18 months from now. This isn't an aspirational goal buried in a 5-year plan. It's a documented timeline backed by public milestones hitting compressed schedules with surgical precision. On November 14, 2024, the Type 076 amphibious assault ship Sichuan departed for sea trials. 2 days later, on November 16th, the ship completed electromagnetic catapult testing. 3 days from departure to validated systems on a fundamentally new warship class. For context, the USS Gerald R. Ford spent 4 years in post-delivery trials working out catapult problems. The Sichuan validated its launch systems in 72 hours. And this isn't just any amphibious assault ship. The Type 076 is the world's first amphibious platform with electromagnetic catapult capability designed specifically to launch autonomous drones at scale. The U.S. Navy has nothing equivalent. America-class amphibious assault ships carry F-35Bs using vertical takeoff. The Sichuan launches fixed-wing autonomous strike drones using the same electromagnetic catapult technology that took the U.S. a decade to troubleshoot on supercarriers. China put it on an amphibious ship and made it work in 3 days of testing. That compression of timelines tells you everything about how seriously Beijing takes the 2027 target. While the Pentagon debates ethical frameworks for supervised autonomy and argues over kill chain authorities, China is 18 months away from fielding operational, intelligentized warfare capability across its entire naval force structure. The bureaucratic distance between those two approaches isn't measured in years. It's measured in doctrinal universes. The Sichuan represents proof of concept. It demonstrates that China can integrate bleeding-edge launch technology with autonomous systems on platforms designed for expeditionary warfare. It shows they can move from design to validated capability faster than Western analysts predicted was physically possible. And it confirms that the 2027 deadline isn't propaganda. It's a schedule they're actually hitting. But here's what makes that timeline genuinely alarming. The Type 076 isn't a standalone system. It's one node in a networked architecture where every platform feeds data to every other platform in real time. And when you network autonomous systems at scale, you don't get incremental improvements. You get mathematical advantages that break traditional defense models. March 25th, 2026. Open waters off China's coast. 5 to 7 L-30 autonomous vessels execute coordinated patrol patterns without direct human control. They detect simulated targets, track them across multiple sensor feeds, intercept on autonomous decision loops, all in formation, all synchronized. Each L-30 weighs 4.5 tons, measures 7.5 meters, hits 35 knots in burst speed, operates over 220 nautical miles without refueling. And here's the critical part. They're mass-producible, they're attritable, they're networked. This isn't about building exquisite platforms you can't afford to lose. It's about building cheap platforms you can afford to lose by the dozen, while the swarm keeps fighting. Traditional air defense systems are designed for sequential threat engagement. Radar picks up contact. Operator confirms. Fire control solution generated. Missile launched. Next target. The entire architecture assumes threats arrive in manageable numbers at predictable intervals. Swarm doctrine shatters that assumption. It presents simultaneous multi-vector attacks from dozens of autonomous platforms converging from different axes at different speeds with different sensor signatures. Human operators can't process that many inputs fast enough to coordinate responses. The cognitive load exceeds human response capacity. That's where the AI-driven decision-making becomes decisive. China's autonomous systems compress sensor-to-shooter timelines from minutes to milliseconds, faster than defensive countermeasures can coordinate, faster than human commanders can issue orders. The OODA loop, observe, orient, decide, act, collapses into machine-speed execution. And when one side is operating on millisecond cycles, while the other is operating on human reaction times, the slower side doesn't just lose the tactical engagement. They lose before they understand what's happening. This isn't about individual platform superiority. The L-30 isn't more capable than a U.S. Navy destroyer, but 50 L-30s, acting as a coordinated swarm, create a problem no single destroyer can solve. They overwhelm defensive architectures through distributed, expendable, coordinated mass. You can shoot down 5, you can shoot down 10. You probably can't shoot down 30 arriving simultaneously from different vectors, while your radar is being jammed and your communications are being disrupted, and more swarms are launching from over the horizon. The mathematics are brutal. Every autonomous platform you add to the swarm increases the defensive problem exponentially. Every platform the defender kills barely degrades the swarm's effectiveness because decision-making is distributed across the network. There's no command ship to sink, no flagship to disable. Just a mesh network of cheap, expendable robots making coordinated decisions faster than humans can think. But the swarm itself is only half the problem. Because China isn't just building autonomous boats, they're building an entire operational concept designed around a very specific scenario. Taiwan sits 110 miles from mainland China across a strait that's become the most militarily contested water on Earth. China conducts large-scale exercises around the island, with documented willingness to demonstrate force projection in waters Taiwan considers sovereign, and every war game, every strategic analysis, every Pentagon assessment reaches the same conclusion. If China moves on Taiwan, it becomes an amphibious operation. And amphibious operations are the most casualty-intensive missions in modern warfare. That's where autonomous swarms solve China's critical vulnerability: crew loss political sensitivity. The Chinese Communist Party cannot sustain public support for a campaign that kills thousands of sailors in the opening hours. But autonomous vessels eliminate that constraint. You can lose 50 L-30s in a single engagement, and the political cost is zero. No funerals, no grieving families, no domestic backlash. Just attritable platforms doing exactly what they were designed to do. L-30 swarms provide expendable interdiction capability in Taiwan Strait choke points. They block U.S. carrier group intervention without risking crewed vessels. A carrier strike group transiting the strait has to move through narrow waters where swarms can mass from multiple shore-based launch points. The carriers can defend themselves, but they can't defend themselves, maintain air operations, and execute strike missions simultaneously while under sustained autonomous attack from platforms that cost a fraction of a single Tomahawk missile. Orca platforms extend that concept across hundreds of nautical miles. Each Orca carries anti-ship missiles. Deploy them in distributed formations, and you create layered anti-access, area denial zones without concentrating vulnerable assets. There's no Chinese carrier group to target, no surface action group to sink, just dispersed autonomous platforms, creating overlapping threat envelopes that force U.S. forces to fight through attrition warfare in littoral waters. And here's the doctrinal mismatch. U.S. carrier strike groups are designed for air superiority and precision strike in open ocean. They're optimized for projecting power against peer competitors who fight conventionally. They're not optimized for countering mass autonomous surface vessel swarms in shallow, contested littoral environments where maneuver space is constrained and every approach vector is covered by shore-based sensors. China looked at American carrier doctrine and asked a different question. How do you deny carriers the operational space they need without fighting them directly? The answer is autonomous swarms. Cheap, distributed, attritable, and fast enough to force carriers into defensive postures where their offensive where their offensive capability becomes irrelevant. But building the swarms is only part of the challenge. Making them work requires something the US military has never successfully achieved at scale. November 2025. The Hudong Zhonghua shipyard in Shanghai. A hull designated L-30 sits alongside another marked with the number 51. They're not related programs competing for funding. They're synchronized components of a single strategic architecture. China State Shipbuilding Corporation doesn't bid against competing contractors. It coordinates development pipelines where research institutions, shipbuilders, and the People's Liberation Army Navy operate as one integrated organism. Dalian Maritime University conducts operational demonstrations on research vessels in the Yellow Sea. Within weeks, those same tactics appear in planned training exercises. There's no translation gap, no committee review, no appropriations battle. The researchers designing the systems are already embedded in the operational doctrine development process. Between November 2025 and March 2026, 3 supposedly separate programs hit critical milestones within a 16-week window. The Type 076 Sichuan completes sea trials validating its electromagnetic launch systems. The L-30 drone carrier platforms undergo integration testing. The Xinhongzhuan research vessel demonstrates cross-domain sensor fusion in open water. These aren't coincidences. They're coordinated deliverables in a centralized development timeline where every institution shares aligned incentives and strategic direction. Compare that to the American system. DARPA funds research. Defense contractors compete for development contracts. Congress appropriates money through annual budget cycles. Doctrinal review committees evaluate operational concepts. The Navy conducts acceptance trials. Years pass between concept and fielding, and that's if the program survives budget cuts, requirement changes, and inter-service rivalry. China's institutional coherence creates velocity that looks like magic to outside observers. It's not magic. It's what happens when research, production, and operational deployment function as a single closed-loop system with no friction between phases. But institutional coherence alone doesn't explain what happened on November 14th. November 14th, 2025. The East China Sea. Hull number 51 begins its first sea trials. The vessel carries a name now, Sichuan, and it carries something no amphibious assault ship has ever mounted before. Electromagnetic catapults belong on supercarriers. They require massive electrical generation capacity, sophisticated power management systems, and precision engineering to repeatedly accelerate aircraft from 0 to launch speed in under 2 seconds. The US Navy spent 2 decades and billions of dollars developing the technology for the Gerald R. Ford class. China just installed it on an amphibious platform designed to launch and recover autonomous drones across multiple domains simultaneously. Over 3 days, Sichuan validates its electrical systems, power generation capacity, and launch mechanisms. These aren't glamorous tests. They're fundamental prerequisites for sustained electromagnetic operations. But they confirm something military analysts have been warning about for months. This isn't an incremental improvement in naval capability. It's a categorical shift in how maritime power gets projected. Sichuan doesn't replace the carrier. It transforms the entire concept of distributed operations. The ship becomes a mobile command node that launches aerial swarms, deploys surface drones, coordinates underwater autonomous vehicles, and receives sensor data across hundreds of miles of ocean. It's a floating hive that turns empty water into contested space without risking manned aircraft or surface combatants. Traditional amphibious assault ships carry helicopters and landing craft. Sichuan carries the infrastructure for autonomous warfare at scale. The difference isn't just technological, it's doctrinal. China built a ship specifically designed for the kind of warfare it plans to fight, while the US Navy continues optimizing platforms for conflicts that look like 1991. But the ship is just hardware. The real breakthrough happened 4 months later, on a research vessel most Western analysts had never heard of. March 29, 2026. Xin Hongzhuan demonstrates unified autonomous command across every domain simultaneously in open water. The Pentagon calls it a capability gap. China calls it the future of warfare.